And I am Simran Jingyani. I run product marketing for ESGRC. So this is kind of a showcase of our product, which was just recently announced about a year ago. We're going to go through a whole bunch of things. A quick little agenda that we're going to go through is the rise and fall of ESG. As I said, ESG and GRC and how they're similar and why they're perhaps even the same, and ESGRC product capabilities of ours. And Sunay is going to do a showcase of our ESGRC product and then summarize the whole thing. No sound. Should I start again?
So what is ESG? Well, if you're anything like me, an acronym makes you flinch. It stands for Environmental, Social and Governance Metrics.
This planet is not doing great. The level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is now higher than ever in human history.
Today, ESG is as much about risk management as it is actually about social activism or trying to change the world. What many companies and investors have realized is that if they ignore what people used to call externalities, in other words, a company's environmental footprint, its impact on a community, what's happening in its supply chain, what's happening in terms of social issues like diversity, inequality. If companies and investors ignore those issues, it has a nasty habit of coming back to bite them.
What do we want?
Okay, so quick intro into what ESG is. We've seen that obviously it's relevant, right? But what does the general landscape look like today? If you look at the left side, you'll see countries are regulating differently and also at different intensities. Frameworks have also slowly been consolidating, but we're not really at a stage that everything is consolidated. And then finally, there are many external factors that keep us all divided on ESG. And sort of there's a question mark on the longevity as well, which we'll get into. You have a lot of backlash on ESG too, which we'll see in the next video, even within pop culture.
One group is here to fix it, giant corporations. Many are now claiming that they've hit upon a solution, becoming carbon neutral or net zero, basically running their businesses in such a way that they don't increase the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. As of last year, 1 in 5 of the world's 2,000 largest publicly listed companies have now committed to a net zero emissions target, which sounds great. You might even have seen them bragging about their claims in ads like this one from United Airlines, this one from Apple. But the key phrasing comes at the end there, that they'd offset any remaining carbon. That's actually a common tactic. In fact, one study that looked closely at the net zero promises of dozens of companies in heavily polluting industries found that 2/3 of them are relying on offsets instead of emissions reductions. Offsets are wildly popular. Even bands have promised over the years to use them to reduce the environmental impact of their tours. And yet, if the idea that you can simply invest a little money and make your carbon footprint disappear sounds too good to be true, that's because it absolutely is.
So another perspective, right? So we've seen at this point why ESG exists, the backlash of ESG, but where does that leave us today? So this article is just actually from 7 days ago, where the ECB, European Central Bank, set new deadlines for banks to deal with climate risk. They did a thematic review to check whether banks are adequately identifying, managing their climate risk, as well as environmental risks such as biodiversity loss. What was really interesting is that what you don't see from this headline is that they actually also dove into all the bank's risk strategies and their governance and risk management processes, all as a part of this ESG program. And so what we're lacking in this entire thing is that we need more sophisticated methodologies when it comes to ESG, right? Currently, you have companies either focusing on only the E, only the S, and not the G, or vice versa. So at this point, we're well aligned that ESG is relevant. and it's here to stay, and that it is being regulated to a certain degree, and regulations are increasing. With the regulations, I want to go into how I believe software can actually help you bridge the gaps as well as you get ready for the future regulations that we all know are coming. So whether your organization is just starting off in their ESG practice or whether you already have an ESG structure in your business, finding a connected solution is very key. And I thought it'd be fun because I'm sure we have all had death by PowerPoint by this point. So we're going to do like a little story time and we're going to go back to when all of us are in school. So my alma mater is NYU. And I remember when I first started at school, I got professors and they were some of the best around the nation. And I want to introduce to you Professor G. Kids call him Professor G because he's a G in ESG. Yeah, laughs? Okay. What's interesting is I started to think back about when I was in school, why did I trust professors? Like, I didn't really look them up. I just automatically was like, oh, smart person, whatever you say, I'm going to retain, and that's God's word. What's interesting is that I went into thinking, okay, so they had respected credentials. They had been doing this longer than me. Somebody else had vetted them, right, the school. And they could define the subject better than I, and finally, because I was told by everybody that they were the best. So now, if we go into metric stream, I started thinking about like, okay, well, we're respected, right? That's why you all are here. We have nearly 200 people here. We have all the credentials. We have everything that is that, category that makes us right for ESG. And as you're going to see later on, you're going to see the connection between ESG and GRC. We obviously have, done very well. I wasn't really going to show you all the quadrants, but here you go. This is how well respected we are and how we've ranked top in GRC. And although this doesn't exist for ESG yet, we have to take this educational approach to how we are looking at ESG. So regulations are changing, and that obviously there's a lot of backlash and conflict that's been happening. But the way that Metric Stream has adopted ESG as one of our key product lines, as you see here, you have business, cyber, and ESG. There's 3 main product lines that we have. Our approach was very problem-solution based, right? So we see that organizations are facing this problem of how to integrate their GRC solutions into their ESG practices as they're developing. They perhaps had older parts of their business, like corporate social responsibility. They're having to deal with HR that perhaps the GRC folks weren't connecting with as much. What's the best way to put that into perspective? And that's exactly why our product was developed, is that if you have a GRC solution, it should be able to integrate well with your ESG solution. So now going into what this session is really about, ESG on GRC. Other software companies, if you've seen and if you guys have looked at other ESG softwares, are focused very heavily on the environmental piece. Very few are focused on the social and governance because they're expecting you to already have that kind of in place at your business. Establishing that effective ESG priority, sorry about that. Yeah. Establishing that is an effective ESG priority is only possible with ESG monitoring and reporting. And that really starts with a strong corporate governance structure. So the governance piece has been developed with your organization's GRC practice. So how can you keep ESG and GRC as total separate entities and total separate groups? We fundamentally, us as Metric Stream, do more than our competitors. They take data, analyze it, and they're telling you kind of a carbon calculation, but not really mapping it against your organization's frameworks. And our tool does all of that. So we go a level deeper than just that reporting piece. We tell you this is what your risk posture looks like, because ESG is a risk at the end of the day. This is how we can guide you into making an achievable roadmap based off of your gaps. So having that, as I sort of started and said, is that having that very focused, all-encompassing solution is the way that we need to look at ESG. And then going into ESG and ERM, right? Enterprise risk management. We've seen that as a part of our business GRC solution. And I'm going to go as far as to say that ESG is an enterprise risk. Not meeting those SCORE standards will damage your organization, including but not limited to getting funding, losing trust in your own community, changed buyer habits, and more. ESGRC and just ESG in general is a digital transformation, and once you actually do the digital transformation, you're set, and you're not going to have to backtrack once these regulations come and go, and we're going to make it simpler for all of us. And then finally, we're going to think out of the box. As you see Professor G coming out of the box, like this presentation. We need to use that G in ESG and make it synonymous to the G in GRC. So that's why we have ESGRC, and it was very intentional that our solution was labeled in that way. And here's a fun little graphic for you guys, because I also happen to run creative and branding for our organization. But this is what we call ESGRC. And then just to recap, before I pass it over to Sune, GRC has been providing the oversight, structure, and culture needed to establish goals of the organization, and that means to pursue them, the ability to understand any sort of associated risks. GRC enables good governance, strong oversight, and supports organizations in effectively identifying, assessing, and addressing the full spectrum of risks to an organization. And ESG, as I said, is another type of risk and can only be effectively managed when it's integrated into organizations' business strategy and risk management. And incorporating those ESG-related risks into the governance structure, systems, and processes is critical for overcoming the challenges that many organizations face in managing these risks, such as organizational silos, quantification challenges, and organizational biases. In recent years, increased climate risk, as you saw, has pushed regulators around the world to enforce way more stringent ESG regulations and frameworks, mandating ESG disclosure reporting and demanding actions. And in order to make more informed financial decisions, investors, lenders, insurance underwriters, everybody needs to make sure that they understand how climate-related risks and opportunities are likely to impact an organization's future financial position, as it's reflected on your income statement, cash flow statement, balance sheets, and so on and so forth. So ESG disclosure reporting, like financial reporting, needs to have appropriate oversight, internal controls, and independent assurance before it's published. So it is in an organization's best interest to extend the existing governance structure, processes, and systems, your GRC solution, to collect, measure, and report your ESG data. So I'll pass it over to Sune to take you into some of our product capabilities.
Thanks a lot, Simran. I hope everyone can hear me. Is this okay? All right, so first of all, thanks a lot for introducing all of us to Professor G. Very insightful. And now I'm going to double click on where Simran left, why ESG should not be just looked at ESG, but as ESGRC. So when we start with the E part of it, environmental part of it, you get data from multiple sources. Some of these sources could be climate risk KRAs. It could be GSS emission, and then there are air quality and multiple other inputs as well. When we look at the social part of it, then you have the community relationships, you have the labor practices, you have the diversity and inclusion. So again, you have multiple sources to get data of the social aspect. And when it comes to the G, the governance part, then again you have the performance KPIs, you have the business ethics, and multiple other sources to get that data. Now, collecting the data is not something that is going to solve the problem. Now let us look at a bigger picture. Just like any financial report, now each organization is also liable to have their disclosure report. Now some of them are doing it very religiously, with a lot of information, a lot of transparency, and which is definitely bringing a lot of trust in the services that you provide. But also think about a lot of companies who are moving towards providing ESG capabilities or having a ESGRC capability within their organization. They're still exploring what should be the right set of data that should be published as part of your disclosure report. But because the fact is, not everything always is right? We know there are a lot of big fashion houses who still have to outsource data to sweatshops, and they cannot publish that openly. But then again, with the awareness and with the right set of risk being transparently shared, we can certainly go to a state where a right disclosure report can be generated. And that is where we are going to also talk about how the GRC is going to play an important role. Now, with the data that we talked about and the data sources, the organizations already have a good understanding about their ESG rating, which is very important if you're talking to banks, if you're talking to your investors. A lot of people want to see good ESG ratings that you have for your enterprise. And at the same time, with this data, you can also define your KPIs to perform much better compared to what you've done already in the past. For example, if I'm trying to reduce my carbon footprint and it is up to a certain level this year, maybe I want to do better next year, right? So we can easily have the ESG performance management as well with the data. Now, once you have the data, once you are aware what should go or what should not go as part of your disclosure report, now also look at what we have to govern all these things as part of the G, which is the frameworks that are already in place, the frameworks that are evolving, and the regulations, right? So we saw a new regulation that has just come up, right? There will be more regulations that we are going to see from different governments, different geographies that are going to come and that are going to empower the whole ESGRC practice. And to this frameworks and regulations to ensure whatever you're doing is right, you need to have the right set of processes in place, right set of controls in place, and right set of policies in place, right? So this is where the overall framework, right from collecting the data, generating the reports, defining the KPIs, still having a rigorous adherence to the framework and the regulation, you need to have GRC in place. Now, how does a typical enterprise risk work? You identify a risk, you assess a risk, you respond to a risk, and then you monitor the risk. In a similar way, the ESG risks are also going to work. So the first half of the chart that you see where GRC is written, the first half talks about the risk and how do you mitigate it. So if you are mitigating risk, then you have risk-informed decisions that you can make. If you're managing your whole program very well, you can have the continuous compliance, and you can also be very resilient in terms of either answering to your investors, customers, or the regulatory bodies in terms of what you're doing as part of your ESG program. And the second half that you see is more in terms of the compliance. So what you do when you have the right set of controls, you can test it out. You can ensure that the controls that are in place are actually giving you the right set of result that you're expecting. And that is where the validation and the certification is going to come into place. You can have internal control assessment. I mean, you have to assess your risk, you have to assess your controls to ensure that they are doing exactly what you're looking for. And then you have to also give information to your internal and the external auditors to prove that you are on a right path. You're doing all the right things that are going to bring in value to your organization. So that's where we believe that ESGRC should not be just looked at ESGRC, but it should be ESGRC as a whole. Now, talking about how from metric stream we can support you in your ESG journey and converting it to ESGRC, there are a couple of capabilities that we have added to our new platform that we have, or new product capability that we have as part of this solution. So first thing is pre-packaged content. Now you don't have to worry about the collection of the content or how do you have the right set of content in place to start with your ESG journey. So we have data that's coming from the GRI, SASB, TCFC. So these are some of the defined frameworks, and the data that you see will be already defined in the system, right? So you don't have to worry about the configuration. We also have standard set of questionnaires that are going to help you collect the data. Internal data, external data with your partners, right? So this is going to help you do that. We also have supplier third-party data collection questionnaire, which you can roll out as a survey and get data from your third parties as well. right? So this is about the prepackaged content that we have. Now, moving to the ESG data collection. Now, what we have done is, with the help of AI, we have automated the process of the data collection, right? So in case if someone from your organization have to respond to a query, then the system can actually ingest the policies. The AI engine can run on top of that and can give you the right set of answers that should be given as part of that survey or as part of that questionnaire, right? What we have also done is, based on the type of questionnaire, we can look at which role is the right one to answer that, and we can automate that workflow to give the right set of questionnaire redirected to the right set of people who should be answering it. What we have also done is we have automated the e-metrics. Now, e-metrics is the actual data that your organization is generated. So here we work with a partner. We collect your data, we ingest the data, and then we build a metrics. E is the environmental metrics. We build the metrics out of it. So the first part, your organization has defined the policies. The data comes from the policies. The second part is the actual data that is getting generated. This could be based on the bills that your organization is generating. These can be enterprise bills or other documents as well. The other thing is about automation of task, email reminder that comes from our framework, and all of our product have this capability. Then we also help you with the review of certification, ensuring the right set of audit trails so that you have end-to-end understanding of who has performed the task, who has got the task, and who's answering it. The other important aspect is about the disclosure report. Now, the system allows you to generate the disclosure report because we are capturing the right set of data. We have the risk assessment data that is done. We have the risk register that is maintained. You can have the data translated to template-based disclosure reports. So this is where we have collaboration capability, which is part of the Microsoft Office 365 integration that we have. And then you have the review and approval mechanism for the disclosure reporting. The other aspect is about capturing and remediate issues. So we have an integration with the issue management system where wherever you see there has been an issue that has generated, you can initiate the issue, send it to the right set of people to work on it, and then eventually remediate it. And then we have the risk control and assessment. Now, ESG, as we said, have a big alignment to your enterprise risk, and this is where the risk assessment plays a very important role. So once you have done the risk assessment and the risk that you've identified can be added to your risk register, and eventually when you're generating the disclosure report, you can refer this risk register to have the right set of risk published in case if you want to maintain the transparency. And then we do the control testing and certification to ensure that your controls are working fine and they are giving the right outcome that you're expecting. We also have inbuilt dashboard and reporting capabilities, which are going to provide you end-to-end ESG insights. And this will be helpful not just for the people or the users of the application, but for the higher management as well. And then we have done integration. So Sustain Analytics, we have integrated, and we get data of the ESG rating about your organization from this particular integration. We have also done integration with EcoVadis. So EcoVadis provide understanding of the partners that you're working with as part of your organizational objectives. So these are the product capabilities that we have as part of the ESGRC solution. Now, I will just take a few more minutes to showcase the capabilities as part of the demo. And we have pre-recorded video, which is going to give you an overview of how the ESGRC product looks and how it works. So this is about, before we go to the disclosure report, let me start it from, yeah.
You have to click into the video.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, so this is how you can generate the ESGRC report. You have a configurable template. You can define the scoping of the report. You can define the sectioning as well. And then you can easily define who should be the owner of it, who should have the visibility so that the right people have the access to it. And then from the framework, you can pull up the data which should be added as part of the report as well. And this is how the report is going to look like. Again, as I said, it's a template-based report. It can have the design that is more aligned to your organization's template. Now, talking about the relevant content, so these are the out-of-the-box dashboards that we have, and these dashboards are clickable. So once you click, you're going to get into more insights, more data that will be helpful. And this is about the questions and procedures that can go to your third-party vendors or internal questions and procedures to gather the information. And then you can deep dive into getting the insights of more data that you've collected from various sources. And as I said, there are multiple disclosure framework for which we already have predefined content that can be used. And then again, a set of reports and dashboarding capabilities. So again, these dashboards and reports are configurable. So if there is a need to configure something else, that is easily doable. And with the next release that we are going to roll out, we are going to have more capability in terms of what the end user want to see. They will be able to do it on their own. So administrative part will be moved so that you don't have dependency on someone else to configure dashboard and charts for you. Issues and action, again, a very important topic. So the system allows you to not just see the insights into the issues that are raised and the remediation stages, but you can also go ahead and create issues wherever you believe there is a problem that has been identified. And then the issues can be easily sent for remediation, and the right set of stakeholders can work on it to have the right set of actions. And once the actions are done, the issues can be closed. While taking a survey, if the user identifies there is an issue or a discrepancy that has to be raised, they can raise an issue and then send it for remediation. And then we have integration to the survey modules. So these are the different surveys that you can initiate within the organization to collect the information, and the information can be captured via the survey mechanism. And this is how different documentation can be easily accessed. So we have the RTF fields, which are defined, where you can read the data in a very structured way, and that is how you can have different reports generated. Again, a different way of collecting the data, and you can have the assignments triggered to different individuals to have the information. So that's all we have from our side, and what we want to say is that as we have seen different presentations today, yesterday as well, ESG has become a very important driver for us to ensure that it is part of our risk assessments, and each organization have their way of contributing to the environmental, social and governance aspect. And this is where having a right set of solution can really add a lot of value, and it can ensure that you are doing all the right things that are doable, and you are ensuring that there's trust and belief that your investors and your customers have in you. Thank you.
Thank you.